Well, when I was an atheist, I had a good friend die, and it was actually at the point when I was in Teach for America. He was mountain climbing, and he fell and he died. It was very sudden. And I think that was the impetus to me another impetus to me starting to seek spiritual things. Because the question that I asked myself was, what happens after death? And I thought, okay, I know the atheists answer that question. That's pretty unsettling, and I'm okay if that's the truth, I'll believe it. But maybe I should think about this and explore this question. But even after I entered the church, I really still struggled with death. You know, my grandmother died after I entered the convent, and I was really shook by her death, like shook to the foundations of my faith. I was wondering, does heaven really exist? Does God really exist? Man, I don't know, because that's what death does to you. It really forces you to kind of come up against all those things that you say that you believe, but do you really believe them? Well, when you get right down to it, do you really believe them? And I had to say honestly to myself, well, I don't. I'm struggling with this. I'm really struggling with this. So I think that's one of the main reasons why I struggled with my vocation for so long. People, when they enter the convent or the religious life in general, you discern for a while and you struggle, but I really struggled. And I think part of it is my past. That was a big burden. But also, I think it was my idea of death and my idea of the afterlife, because vocation is eschatological. Like, you are pointing people to the afterlife. So if you don't believe in the afterlife, or if you struggle with that, it's not going to work. So right before I made my first vows, I was reading Wisdom, the Book of Wisdom, chapters 2 and chapters 3. And so as I was reading chapter 2, there's different things where they're talking about you should drink and you should be merry, and basically, I'm summarizing, and you should kind of celebrate life and live it while you have it. And I was like, oh yeah, exactly. And then they get to the part where, and you should oppress the widow and the orphan, and I was like, wait a second. And so they were kind of encapsulating the modern way of looking at life, like YOLO, you only live once, just celebrate life, and you can't live a vocation if you live that way, because you're always thinking, I got to get out, I got to just celebrate this life and do what I want. So as I was reading that, I felt like God was saying, shift your perspective. You have to look at this differently. You have to look at death differently, and you have to look at your life differently. So, a couple years later, I got a skull for my desk because our founder had a skull on his desk. And at the time that I read it, I was like, that is so punk rock and metal. I really want a skull for my desk. So that was my only thought about it. It wasn't really deep. But at that point, I was like, I do want to meditate on death. I do think this would be very fruitful for my vocation. So I started to do it. I started to tweet about it every day. And it's changed my life. Like, it really has. It has helped me to realize that our life is not about this life, our life is about the next life, but thinking about the next life is what changes this life for the better. So it's really helped me to put my life in perspective and put my vocation into perspective.